For all you people out there with that weird obsession for true crime podcasts, this one's for you. Welcome back to the TV Corner, guys. Today we are talking about Only Murders in the Building Season 1. Only Murders in the Building is a Hulu original about a trio of unlikely friends who come together to form a podcast following a murder in their very own apartment building. It stars Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. Yes, you heard that right. I'm going to be honest, I cannot say enough good things about this show. It has so many highs, one of them being the atmosphere. It's got this cool, classy, tasteful vibe, but it's also modern and fun. It's that kind of show, especially being a murder mystery show, where it makes you feel like you just want to sit in a coffee shop and just read a murder mystery novel. Like if Elevator Muzak was a show, it'd be this. But again, it's also modern and fun. Like the production design, especially of the apartments, is so cool. I watched this with my family, and my mom was in love with Steve Martin's apartment. She just wanted to like recreate the entire thing because it's just so cool looking. And the entire thing, its production design was awesome because it was very Clue-esque. You know, with like there was so many different colors, and you know there's so many different people in different rooms. They've got a couple different weapons, things like that. It just had this kind of modern Clue vibe. It also seems to take a page out of Rear Window because there are so many different shots where you see the side of the building and you'll see different people in their rooms, and they'll be doing something interesting either for their character or for the plot. Even in the intro theme and in the posters, they have it be the side of the building, and you just kind of go up and see different people with different colors attached to them. It's really cool. Also, this cast, I would never have ever thought to put Steve Martin and Martin Short, who are kind of a package deal within themselves, with Selena Gomez. That just would never have crossed my mind, but they were amazing. I'm not even kidding. They were so good. Steve Martin plays a former actor, and he's a very lonesome person. Martin Short plays a former theater director who had a terrible show happen, and he was basically out of the business. And then you have Selena Gomez, who plays an artist slash fashion designer, and she kind of just keeps to herself. And their dynamic, their banter, their friendship, that they kind of come together being these three strangers, and then they sort of start to like each other while they do this podcast. It was so good. It was so wholesome. Steve Martin and Martin Short, they play Charles and Oliver, and Selena Gomez is Mabel. It's funny because Charles and Oliver are obviously older, and Selena Gomez is in her 20s, and so there's that whole dynamic of like, she's teaching them how to be hip and cool and how to text and things like that. So it was really funny. And I think this is my favorite role that Martin Short has ever played.
Sex toys! We got sex toys!
He was hilarious in this because he's so outgoing, he's so dramatic. Every time they do the podcast, he's like, can you try that just a little bit more this way or that way, or give it more feeling? And then obviously again the relationship between Mabel and Charles, being she's trying to get him out of his shell. Again, they were just so wholesome. I loved the three of them together. Probably one of my favorite trios of all time, if I'm being honest. And besides them, there's a whole host of cameos. I'm obviously not going to say what they are, but there's like at least 4 or 5 that I can think of off the top of my head. So it was really cool having those people all come in here and play little different roles that sometimes turn into bigger roles, but it was just so interesting because it just added even more to this element of not only the mystery, but also the podcast with a bunch of famous people. And like I mentioned, it is so funny. This is a really hilarious. I mean, it is a comedy. You know, it's a murder mystery, but it's also a comedy, and it was just so good. Some of the jokes were so inventive. It's honestly less about jokes themselves and just how everybody plays off of each other, especially during the podcast stuff, which in and of itself was a really fun thing. It not only addressed things like them making it and how they're going to get likes and people viewing it, things like that, but the fans of it too, which is cool because if you are a true crime podcast or just a podcast listener in general, it was kind of like a little nod to you because it was talking about the fans, like the really hardcore fans. They have like 4 fans. They're like staged outside the building, and it was just, it was really cool that they brought them in. There was a lot of really interesting things that they did like that I never thought they would go in that angle, but it was cool things that they brought in. But of course, I can't talk about this review and not talk about the mystery itself. It was a really great mystery. There's a lot of different parts to this, and they just kind of keep coming, but it's not like it's super complex because they do consistently give you answers to things and then bring more things up. So it keeps going, but it's not like it's so much that at the end it's just a giant bunch of exposition, or you're just so confused that you're just kind of done with it. There's a lot of different little parts to it, and there's so many characters, but it was a really investing mystery, I would say, because there was a lot of fun parts to it as well. I also have to say I am obsessed with the score. It's done by Siddhartha Khosla, who also does the score for This Is Us, and I can definitely see that because he has a really good way of making these sort of choral chanting, sort of haunting kind of scores, but they're not like so haunting that you're like, this is creeping me out. It's just, it gives a lot of like cool mystery to it. And obviously that works for this show, but again, it's also kind of tasteful and sort of coffee shop music, and it just really went along with that atmosphere that they were going for. I love the intro theme, and then a lot of the themes after that are sort of variations on that same theme, but still super cool. I loved it. I do have one low. It is kind of a big one. I wasn't a huge fan of who the murderer ended up being and why. It's a pretty big part, I acknowledge that. Just for me, it was one of those endings where it felt like their reason that they were able to find out wasn't addressed until almost the end. That sounds obvious, but like in terms of, it wasn't something that would have ever come up before. And I don't know, it just felt like the motivation itself was kind of weak, considering all the different pieces of evidence, all the different motivations we could have had. There are different elements to it. There are kind of multiple antagonists, but the one who it ended up being, I wasn't a huge fan. I kind of guessed it. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything more than that, but I will say this. Even with that being the only low, even though it's a big one, I still think that this is one of the best shows I have seen in a while. It once again proves your ending, your antagonist, does not account for the entire show. So overall, Only Murders in the Building was a really big shock for me because I expected it to be kind of fun, maybe a little funny, and it was ended up probably being one of the best shows I have seen in a long time. It was funny, it was wholesome, it was fun, it had stakes, but it wasn't so serious that you were like, this is too heavy. The casting was great, the atmosphere was great, all of it was awesome. Even though I didn't love who it ended up being, it still didn't take away from the whole show for me. And in fact, the whole show was so good and I loved it so much that I'm going to give Only Murders in the Building a 4 out of 4. Guys, let me know what you think about Only Murders in the Building. If you have seen it, let me know what you thought of that ending, because it does end on a cliffhanger, and they are going into a season 2. I'm super excited because it's something that I did not expect them to do. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and TV shows right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.